Okay, let's lesson 66, geometric series, and we're on pages 152 and 153. Okay, if you remember from lesson 65, a geometric sequence is when you have a sequence of numbers that are generated by multiplying by the same number. Like here's an example where you were multiplying by 2. Here's an example where we were multiplying by -3. This is on page 150. Now what we want to do is we want to take it as a series, which means we're going to add them and see how we could possibly add them up without having to write them out and adding. And then with a calculator, I don't know that it saves a lot of time, but it does help a little bit with the arithmetic as you're doing it. So the sum of a geometric series is S sub n, same terminology, and I'll remind you of what that is A sub 1 times 1 minus r to the n. Now you have to be careful on that one because we usually use n minus 1, so you do have to watch on that one. And then all of that is going to be over 1 minus r. Now let's review what we've got. So n is the number of terms we're talking about. So if we're going to add 10 numbers or 5 numbers, a sub 1 is your first term, and there's your n, same as this n. And then your r is what you're multiplying by. Now you have to be careful with some of your arithmetic here, and I'm going to put all the steps in it just to help you, because sometimes the hardest on this is typing it into your calculator. So the first ones we're going to do, I think we'll do a couple of these, and then I'm going to do some different ones for you. Let's see, I think we've got 3 different types of problems in this lesson. So the first problem we're going to do is you're given the first term, you're given the 9th term, and you're given the r. Now you could find this series if you wanted to. You know, the first term is going to be 3. You'd multiply by 2, so the next term would be 6. You'd multiply by 2, the next term would be 12. And then when you get all the way up, the 9th term is 768. That's a lot of arithmetic. This still is quite a bit, but it's faster if you generate it by the formula. So we're going to be adding 9 numbers because they gave us the first one and they gave us the last one. So S sub 9 is equal to the first term, which is 3, and then parentheses, and then 1 minus our r, which they told us was 2, and then that's going to be raised to the 9th. Doesn't go down 1. And then all of that is over 1 minus r, which is 2. Now, I'm not going to type all of it in one step. You really have to be careful on this, because if you use that fraction setup, you could probably type it with parentheses. I didn't even go about thinking about working it that way. Let's see, am I on? Yes. Let's see, I believe that's out. Quit, clear. I think that's alpha link. Let's try it that way. So I've got 3. I do want to talk a little bit about the arithmetic. 3, that's awful tiny. I don't know if you can see it. 3 open parentheses, 1 minus 2 raised to the 9th. And then I'm going to have to arrow over and close my parentheses. And then I'm going to go down and I'm going to go ahead and just put the -1, because 1 minus 2 is going to be -1. And when I generate that, I get 1,533. And I know a lot of you use that key, so that makes it a little bit easier. What I actually do is I just typed 1 minus 2 raised to the 9th. Don't have to use parentheses, hit enter. And then I just said times 3. And I got this, and then I divided by -1. I just did that in my head and got the positive 1,533. Let's do another one like that. So I've got the first term is 2. The 8th term is -4,374. And the r is -3. That probably doesn't surprise you because you see that there's involving some negatives here. Now this is where you just got to be careful as you type your arithmetic, and you've got to be careful with parentheses. Whether you do it with the fraction mode, or doing just the arithmetic like I was doing it. So S sub 8 is equal to, can you still see your formula? A sub 1, your first term, which is 2. times 1 minus, now watch what I'm going to have to do, negative 3 raised to the 8. Now, a lot of people want to go ahead and go, oh, negative times negative. No, you remember order of operation. You got to do that exponent first, and then we'll discuss what's going to happen with those signs. But you've got to set it up like this. A positive number raised to an even or odd is not going to affect the sign, but when you're raising a negative to an even or odd, it's going to change this sign, which can change what's going to happen here. And then all of this is over 1 minus that r, and I'm going to go ahead and write it 1 minus negative 3. Now, let's talk about what's going on there. I've seen so many people want to put a plus right here. Now, think about it. If you raise a negative to an even number, negative 3 squared, that's going to be negative 3 times negative 3 is going to be positive 9. If you raise a negative number to an even, this whole thing right here is going to become positive. And so you're going 1 minus a positive number. So it's not distributing, you don't clear your parentheses. Now, yes, you can, when it says, when we say, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, this is considered your clearing out, not necessarily the parentheses. This is your exponent. There's parentheses is when you're distributing or something. If you chose to distribute your 3 or distribute your 2. But we've got to get rid of inside the parentheses is what you're actually doing. That's probably the best way to say it. We're trying to get rid of this parentheses, but we've got to do this work inside here. So I'm going to actually write it out. So we're going to have 2 times 1 minus, and when you raise negative 3 to the 8th, now I just said 3 to the 8th because I knew that a negative 3, and remember, you've got to put, because if you don't put that in parentheses, it's only going to raise the 3 to the 8th, not the negative. So negative 3 raised to the 8th is going to be 6,561. See, if you put negative 3 raised to the 8th, it's going to give you the negative of it, because that's not, this is only raising the 3, not the negative. So here we're raising the whole thing. So we ended up with 1 minus positive 6,561 over 1 plus 3, which is 4. Now you can type it any way you want to. If you typed it this original way, which I didn't even try before, let's see, let me clear that out. It'll look a little bit better. I've got 2 parentheses, 1 minus, open parentheses, negative 3, close parentheses, raised to the 8th, arrow over, close parentheses. And then I'm going to go down and I'm going to go ahead and put my 4. And I get my negative, I don't think we even said the answer when we typed it, and we get negative 3,280. You just got to be careful as to how you decide you're going to type it. Okay, number 3, we're going to do a little bit different. You won't see much, but just notice what they give you a little bit different. We're going to do the first term and the R and the number of the term. Notice they didn't give us the last term, but you're really not using that last term in your problem. You really use that to get the 8. That's what you use to get how many numbers you were adding. Like here we added 8, here we added 9 up here. So here they're just giving me the first term, what my R is, and how many terms I'm going to do. First term would be 3, second term would be negative 15, then multiply again, it would be positive. It's going to alternate positive, negative. So we're going to add 7 numbers. And if you can still see your formula way up here, a sub 1 is 3. And then 1 minus r raised to the 7th. And then all of that over 1 minus negative 5. Now, think about what's going to happen here. Negative 5 raised to the 7th. When you raise a negative number to an odd number, it's going to be negative. Because negative, well, if you do simple ones like negative 2 squared is positive 4, but negative 2 cubed is negative 8. Anytime you have an odd number of negatives, they're going to multiply to a negative. If you have an even number of negatives, they're going to multiply to a positive. So what's that going to do to this? That's going to make this minus, okay, let me put the extra step in there. it's going to be 1 minus, and then all of this is going to become negative 78,125 when you raise negative 5 to the 7th. And I went on put that extra step in there, and then that's going to be a 6 on the bottom. So cleaning all that up, you've got 3 times 1 plus that, 78,126 over 6, which is 39,063. Okay, I don't know if I can adjust. I think I'm going to stop. Okay, I just decided to go to the top of the next page. It's harder to get everything under the camera than I need. So we've done 1, 2, 3, and then the last type of problem, number 4, is they're going to actually give you the sequence and make it, once you make it a series, you're adding them. So they wrote it like this: negative 1 minus 5 minus 25 minus 125 dot dot dot, and we're going to add up the first 6 terms. Now, if it's new to you and you're not thinking about it, I'm going to actually write it negative 1. That's, you know, negative 1 is your first term, negative 5 is your second term. So it's negative 1 plus negative 5 plus negative 25 plus negative 125. I mean, I think y'all get it, but I just wanted you to see what's happening in terms of those negatives, because sometimes it's a little confusing when you think about what you're multiplying by. So we're adding the numbers. Now, when we do our sum with our formula that I better rewrite up here, S sub n equals A sub 1 times 1 minus r to the n over 1 minus r. Now notice the only thing we don't know is the r. Now you just have to be careful. Is it 5? Is it negative 5? That's what you have to watch. Take any term, and I always usually take the first 2, especially if they're integers, and the r is any term divided by the 1 in front of it. So that would be positive 5 is my r. Let me slide it over, because negative 1 times positive 5 gives me negative 5. And then negative 5 times positive 5 gives me negative 25. So you see that if the r is negative, they're going to alternate sides. But if the r is positive, the signs are actually going to stay the same. So that's all that I need extra. And so negative 25 divided by negative 5 also gives me positive 5. That's what makes it a geometric sequence, is you're multiplying by the same number. So S sub 6 is equal first term times 1 minus r, which is 5. Notice it's not negative, so I don't have just 1 minus 5 raised to the 6, all over 1 minus 6. So I've got negative, I'm going to do it under here because I don't want to run into the work over there. So I've got negative 1 times, and then I just typed in 1 minus that, and I got negative 15,624. And then, oh, I did something wrong right there, didn't I? R was not, N was the 6. The R was 5. So 1 minus 5, that was my R. Sorry, right there. 5 here, 5 here. And so then I've got 1 minus 5 is negative 4. Positive divided by negative is going to be negative, and you get 3,906. And that's the 3 different varieties of problems you'll see in your classwork.